God, we heard your voice. We heard what you can do. We know your heart for adoption. Would you just come through? And there was moments where we got no's. There was moments where we just held each other and cried. We had planned to have kids, and we thought we wanted a lot of kids, and but we didn't have a plan to do that until we were about 5 years in. And then a year and a half in is when my mother-in-law knocked at the door of our house, and we were actually moving the next day to South Florida. U-Haul was packed in our driveway, and I opened the door, and my mother-in-law and my father-in-law were there, and my mother-in-law's holding this 4-month-old baby boy. As soon as I opened the door and saw this little boy, God just whispered in my heart, "You're his daddy." And
wow.
I couldn't ignore it. I was terrified of it. And I was like, God, this isn't really what I planned, but I feel like I would die for this little boy. I just met him. Like, I'd go hungry for this little boy. And God just put this desire in our hearts to be his parents. And so we fought for him for a long time, about a year and a half through the foster care system. And then he came to live with us. And then 2 months later, my wife gave birth. So we went from no kids to 2 kids in like 2 months. And different stages of life, and we just jumped in the deep end.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how life is. I mean, we can make our plans, and then God, he orders our steps, right? So
Yeah.
I love that. That was the first moment you saw Coleman, and it was your mother-in-law who had him. Tell us a little bit about how that happened. Can you bring us deeper into that story?
Yeah, so the story, my mother-in-law kind of operated as a safe home for kids who were kind of not in foster care yet, but they were being taken out of dangerous situations or scary situations. And so they took him out of that situation and put him in with a safe home, which was my mother-in-law's home. And that's the night we met him. And then he entered into foster care through my mother-in-law's home. They became foster parents. And in a moment of really a miracle, honestly, the courts decided to turn him over to us. And we were living out of state, so that's a whole nother issue. And it was just all these little miracles that we didn't know were going to happen. Honestly, it looked like the odds weren't in our favor. But we felt like God had called us to be his parents. So we just kept praying that promise. And God, we heard your voice. We heard what you can do. We know your heart for adoption. Would you just come through? And there was moments where we got no's. There was moments where we just held each other and cried. And then I'll never forget the day when the court said, all right, he's yours. And it was tears of victory and joy. So it's a wild story. But every somewhat adoption story is a wild story.
It is.
You know?
Some of my best friends are in Florida, and they have adopted 2 brothers.
Yeah.
But there are 2 brothers out there who they also attempted to adopt, and it just never came to fruition. So how do you call all of these little moments miracles when you're just ahead of them? Because you're telling me about these no's that you heard.
Yeah.
I'm hearing a no. It had to be tempting to say, okay, God, we're moving. We already had that plan.
Yeah.
Maybe this isn't even part of the picture for us. Are you telling us no?
Right.
Or are we being told no and it's something we're supposed to step up against?
Right.
How do you know?
It's prayer and it's discernment. I mean, I could try to say, hey, we were the hero of our story, but it's wrong. We weren't. I mean, there was days where I felt like a coward and I was scared out of my mind. Like, what is going to happen to this little boy? Like, well, how God, if you called us to this, why are we getting all these no's? Why are we facing all these walls? And I remember one day specifically, we were living in Nashville, and we called the foster system. At that point, the foster system was on our side. They were like, yeah, you're first in line to get this little boy once the rights are terminated. And then I called just to check in, like, hey, what are the things we need to do to get ready? Like, are there certain classes, certain certifications that we need to get? And they were like, you know what? We actually changed our mind. You're not even on the list at all now. And I just remember holding my wife as we sobbed together at the top of our stairs saying, well, everything you told us now doesn't matter. And so all of our confidence was just shattered. And no one prepared me as a husband that there were going to be days where I couldn't fix it. You know, no one told me that there was going to be moments that I couldn't provide what I needed to provide for my family. And what I understand now is that I was never meant to fix everything. I was never meant to provide everything. Needing Jesus and having a Savior and having a Father who has a relationship with us, that's what faith is not something you can do for yourself, something you have to have a miracle happen for you. And so we just started praying like, God, we trust you. I don't know what the outcome is, and maybe someone who's listening to this is before the breakthrough, or maybe the breakthrough's not on its way, and we have to learn to be patient even in the no, and know that if we really trust God, and this is what we held on to, was that Scripture says that He is working for the good of those who love Him and are called according to His purpose. If I find myself as a believer, I know that I love Him and He loves me, and so that promise is just as true as it was for the author who wrote that passage as it is for me today. And so if I trust that the heart of God is for my good and for His glory, I can trust Him whatever the outcome is. That's hard to hear. Maybe it's a health thing, or maybe it's a foster care thing or an adoption thing. We can't control the results, but all we can do is pray to the one who can.
And so you're taking time out, because I know you could be in a studio right now, or you could be talking about your latest single, or you could be doing whatever else right now. But the fact that you're taking this time to explain this, because you're on the other side of it, is a beautiful thing. What would you tell someone who is in the middle of that process right now, and they are hearing no after no after no, and they just feel as though is it time to give up?
Maybe the no is a moment to get creative. I know right now, especially with everything going on in the world, international adoption is pretty much shut down. And so I know a lot of people I actually have several internationally adopted cousins and family, but that option's kind of disappeared for a bit. And so what I would say is maybe if you feel like God is calling you to adoption, look to foster care. This is probably the most needed time ever for safe homes. And the scary thing about quarantine, the scary thing about all these shutdowns and schools not being in session is school was actually a rescue for a lot of these abused kids in terrible situations. And they need good homes, and they need homes who love Jesus and are ready to show them that kind of love. So you can sign up for foster care. There's a great program right here in Tennessee called Tennessee Kids Belong. And I recommend that. And if you are in the adoption process and you're hearing no's and you're seeing loops that you have to jump through, remember that God promises us our daily bread. So maybe the yes isn't a part of your daily bread today. Maybe it's just sowing the act of prayer, sowing the act of faith over your situation. Hold tight, stand firm, and when you're weak, He will fill you with His strength. And that's what we had to lean on. I can say, yes, my little boy is mine forever now, and that was a beautiful moment, but a year and a half of crying, of praying, and shaking in fear some days. So I know how it feels, but I know that the God that met me is the same God who's going to meet you, no matter what the answer is on the other side.
Right, and His answer is the answer. You're talking about taking one step at a time, too, and so many of us are in process in something. We're all, I think especially with the pandemic and everything that's going on, and just a lot of unrest, everybody is facing a struggle right now. So I think it's advice that really makes its way through whatever that struggle may be, to just take that very next step to listen for God's guidance and to seek wisdom from Him in the process. So tell me about Coleman today.
Oh, he's amazing. He just started kindergarten. He is in T-ball right now. I am a T-ball coach. Nice. Look at that. Yeah, I never thought, but quarantine gave me all the time to coach baseball. So I am.
Are you that super competitive dad on the sidelines?
I try not to be.
I
try not to be, but when you're little boys on second base building sandcastles in the middle of the game, you're like, come on! No, but he is great. He is awesome. He loves T-ball. He has the attention span of a pea right now. And but he is wild and crazy, and we love him so much.
Oh, it's amazing. Well, thank you so much for stopping by here and sharing some of the story and encouraging so many people, whatever the difficulty they're up against, whether it's adoption or, they're trying to walk through the foster care system, which can be sticky. And your message to them is simply persevere.
Come on, absolutely, and hold to faith. Faith is there, and not when we don't think we need it. It's there the whole time. So make every day just a step of faith.
Thanks for watching this episode of Can I Ask You Something? We're working on more videos of personal stories and expert opinions that help you apply your faith in all of life's circumstances. Way Nation is a crowd-funded nonprofit that creates fun and meaningful blogs and videos and podcasts that give you a confident and joyful faith. You can see all of our work and lend your support at waynation.com.